to the closing bell on Wall Street, and what a day it has been for the investment world. Trade, trade, trade. We opened the market higher at the open, and it's up throughout the course of the day. Intraday records were seen. The Dow is currently up 0.75%. And look at the reason why. Green across the screen. Boeing is the best performer of the day. Once again, it's trade. And if you look deeper into the whole story, this is what's been driving the day. It's the USMCA, NAFTA by any other name. Donald Trump introduces the new trade agreement with Mexico and Canada. GE brings its share price back to life. It is up some 10%. It got rid of its chief executive. And Tesla bounces back after Elon Musk settled with regulators. Live from the world's financial capital, New York City, on Monday, October the 1st, I'm Richard Quest. I mean business. Good evening. Tonight, President Trump's tough trade stance appears to be paying off. The United States, Canada and Mexico have agreed on a replacement for NAFTA. And as you saw at the open in the market moment, stocks are rallying across the board. The US president says that this new deal is a big win for the United States, and he does so starting with the very name.
It's my great honor to announce that we have successfully completed negotiations on a brand new deal to terminate and replace NAFTA and the NAFTA trade agreements with an incredible new US-Mexico-Canada agreement called USMCA. It sort of just works. MCA. USMCA. And that'll be the name, I guess, that 99% of the time we'll be hearing, USMCA. Has a good ring to it.
Ah, indeed. USMCA has a very good ring to it. So much so that during the course of the day, we kept thinking, what was that ring? USMCA. Oh, yes, that's what it was.
It's fun to stay at the
USMCA.
It's fun to stay at the
USMCA. So let's continue with that thought from the village people. The USMCA, and put it in the terms that they would have recognized. So the U, the main winner for the United States, greater access to Canadian dairy market. And then you've got, of course, the C for Canada. It keeps trade disputes resolution panel. The M, it's all about maintaining access to the United States, especially auto manufacturing. And as for the A, well, the A, of course, means it needs to get approval from Congress for this to take effect. Where did we get this idea of USMCA? We got it from our Canada correspondent, Paula Newton, who is with me.
I didn't want to start all that, Richard. Really good to see you.
Hey, come on.
Oh, I'm not doing it. It's okay. Have a seat.
Right. What do you make of the USMCA? What will they make of it? Justin Trudeau has been speaking about this in Canada.
Yeah, and he has been saying that, look, this is a good deal for Canada, principally, but it is a good deal for North America. And why is it a good deal for North America? Because they can move on to the real trade irritant, which is China. It is very difficult to look at any part of this deal and not think about what is to come in terms of the trouble ahead. You were talking about everything that was there. What is not there? The lifting of steel and aluminum tariffs, which you and I have talked about before. Those remain in place.
Why would the US not give the exemption to them, bearing in mind they were getting a greater deal in the offing?
They didn't want to lift those. They say they're on a separate track. They want those to remain in place politically, at least for a little while, in order to send, again, that message to China to say, look, if we need to swing a hammer at these negotiations, we will. We did it to Mexico. We did it to Canada. We will do it to you as well. And there's also a message in there for Japan, Europe, anyone else wanting to go to the table with Donald Trump.
Right, but countries like South Korea, which has just completed chorus, did get them lifted. And there's been the talk of lifting them for the European Union, who've also agreed. In fact, they said they've extended extended the exemption for the EU whilst the negotiations take place on a new trade agreement concerning autos.
The transshipment issue, which you've heard about before, right? China dumping into other countries and then having they're not convinced, the United States is not convinced that the countries are doing enough to mitigate against that. Canada has started trying to do what it can, trying to actually put some money against that to make sure that they can guard against that, but it's not 100% yet.
On the personal relationship between President Trump and...
could it be better? Let me tell you.
You know, he was honest. He said, we had a disagreement, but we are friends. I guess that's not how they see it in Ottawa.
Well, you know, it's the old cliche, right? If that's how you treat your friends. I think what stayed intact here was Jared Kushner, son-in-law of the president, and his relationship with both the prime minister and those around Prime Minister Justin Trudeau, and that is what got the job done at the end. Not because Donald Trump had a change of heart. Donald Trump had a change of heart because he wanted this deal. He wanted to go into the midterms with this deal.
Last question for you, just after we've heard from Justin Trudeau.
Négociation importante.
Like any important negotiation, we had to make compromises. And I tell you, some were more difficult than others. We never believed it would be easy, and it wasn't. But today is a good day for Canada.
Okay, but today was a good day for Canada, papering over the cracks of the disagreement. But at the end of the day, how deep are the scars from the way Canada, the way it was treated? And let's not forget, you know, President Trump did describe Justin Trudeau as weak and dishonest.
And, yeah, basically called him out as a liar. I think in terms of the relationship going forward, it doesn't matter. There was no collateral damage done. What is key here, Richard, is the fact that when you talk to Canadian business people, U.S. business people, that deal is in place. And I think the Trudeau government will go out of its way to make nice with Donald Trump right now, if he's up for it, because there's just too much at stake not to.
Paula, thank you.
Thank you. Good to see you.
Joining me now, Bruce Heyman. He served as the U.S. ambassador to Canada. Bruce, good to see you.
Good to see you, Richard.
All right, let's get your perspective. A lot of people are saying that this deal is no more than TPP light or TPP heavy, whichever way you... Do you think that?
I do. This deal could have easily been done a year ago with the things that were negotiated. And yet we wouldn't have had to have all these recriminations and hostile actions by the president to the prime minister, to the foreign minister, to the people of Canada, which are going to be wounds that will take a while to heal. So I do not see the big deal here other than free trade was at risk and free trade won the day. And so that's good news for North America and probably a good signal for our allies around the world.
The USTR, US Trade Reps Office, in its announcement of today's deal, went out of its way to trumpet the fact that many of the USMCA provisions are better than would have been in NAFTA 1 or in TPP. In other words, they have got a better deal than anything else has been received before.
Maybe a tad so. Look, dairy access was 3.25% increase on TPP. They got less than 0.25% increase with all the yelling and screaming and noise that the president made. They're at 3.59%. They threatened to take down the whole supply management system, and yet they only got 0.25% increase. I think that, you know, these could have been negotiated out diplomatically a year ago.
And if we look at the regulations, for example, of content, particularly in the automobile sector, that's a huge one. And the number of automobiles, the number of vehicles that can be imported into the United States before a cap is hit. Surely these are real benefits.
They are, but mainly affecting the Mexican side of the equation, which was already pre-negotiated. So content is not a stretch for the Canadian manufacturer, and the wage levels of $16 an hour is also not a big impact. So Canada, you know, is not dramatically impacted by much of the negotiations that took place on the auto side. It was more the Mexican market.
If you now take the totality, the USMCA, as it's, I can't stop thinking about that song YMCA every time I say it. I know it'll be on the brain for the rest of the night. But if you think about the USMCA, Donald Trump and the administration will rightly, some would say, point out, one, they've got chorus with the Koreans. They've now got USMCA as the replacement for NAFTA. They're starting talks with Europe. China remains the difficulty, but China has now seen that Trump means business.
Yeah. So I think you're right. I think there is some progress here, but some of it is just faux progress because he created this drama, and with all this drama, he gets an outcome that he could have had without the drama. I'll tell you, the arsonist running into a building on fire who grabs somebody and pulls them out doesn't get the hero award. So, you know, he is a disruptor. And I don't think we benefit from what he has done. And we're going to really pay the price diplomatically for a while.
Good to see you, sir, in beautiful Aspen, Colorado. Thank you. Free trade has created jobs in the United States. That's what BMW's chief executive is telling us tonight. He says, quite simply, the free trade model generates wealth. Harald Kruger spoke to Melissa Bell, and both were at the Paris Auto Show.
I mean, we are in a very volatile market situation. If you think about the free trade and if you look at the global markets, what happens in Europe or what happens in the UK, there are still markets which are growing. We are acting with flexibility, but markets are under pressure, definitely. And this is a little bit one of the outcomes. But I'm optimistic.
You are, of course, at the front line of the trade disputes, of these growing trade wars. Already you've had to pass on the result of retaliatory tariffs from China onto consumers there, shifting some of your production as well to China. These are effects that are already being felt.
We decided to build the X3 in China already a couple of years, 2.5 years ago. So we are building on the one side the X3 in Spartanburg, which is our biggest plant in the world, in South Africa and China, so to adjust to the local production needs and to the local markets. So with our very flexible production network, we can adjust to that overall worldwide situation.
On the question of Spartanburg, it is remarkable that you have the biggest plant in the world. You export the most amount of cars that are made in the United States, and yet you are one of those companies that's likely to bear the brunt of Donald Trump's tariffs, especially these car tariffs go through. How do you feel about that? What can you do?
I mean, we are clear ambassadors of free trade across the globe because the free trade model definitely creates wealth. You can see that in South Carolina. We have now more than 11,000 people working in our plant. 70% of the production is exported. Yeah? BMW is the biggest net exporter in terms of value from the United States. And that was the success of Spartanburg. And we continue to build on this one. And I believe in the free trade. And that has demonstrated that it will create jobs. And that's what we need.
What would a no Brexit or a bad Brexit deal mean for the car industry?
I mean, first of all, I'm looking forward that there is a pragmatic solution on both sides, because if there's a hard Brexit or a chaotic Brexit, both sides will lose. The UK will lose and Europe will lose as well. So I hope that there is a way out in terms of a pragmatic solution. But we are preparing for a shutdown in April to pull forward something we planned in August to prepare if there is maybe some problems. And the flexibility we can pull ahead is something we will take as a lever. But if you know that we are building the Minis on the one side in Oxford, on the other side in the Netherlands, we can also move production and adjust it where needed. But I'm clearly driving the business that we prepare for the tough Brexit if it comes, but we need to have a political solution on both sides, otherwise both sides will lose.
If a tough Brexit is on the cards, that will have an impact, though, on jobs in the United Kingdom.
That is too early to say, definitely. But what it means to the process chain, to the value chain, that is having an impact, because we need, you see, every day we have 100 lorries and trucks with parts going into the UK and coming out with finished products. So if there's a disturbance, that will have an impact on the profitability.
In fact, listening to you, car makers like yourself are dealing with such choppy waters. The big problem is uncertainty, and on both fronts, in terms of Brexit and what Donald Trump might or might not do. Can you remember a time that has been anything like this complicated for car makers?
It's a complicated situation on the one side, but on the other side, the strength of BMW is to have a huge global production network, having flexibility as its strength, having as a competitive advantage. And these times show definitely that you need this flexibility and that we are good at preparing this. On the other side, as a business, we need free trade. Clear.
Lots of free trade. General Electric shares are up more than 8%. They had been higher. They're up as much as 12 at one point during the day. The chief executive has gone, barely a year in the job. He gets fired. Flannery gets fired. The market loves what it sees, but is it just all too soon? In a moment, Tesla's chief exec will stay in his job, even though Elon Musk is to get some extra help in the future. There will be an overseer of the Musk tweets after the break.